Ben, when I get back from a bike ride, the last thing I can be bothered with is stretching. I just want to get a brew, have something to eat, maybe have a beer, sit on the sofa. I do not want to do 10 minutes of stretching. Convince me that I should.
Well, I mean, you're like 99% of other cyclists, and I see it all the time. But there are a number of reasons why a person should stretch. The first thing is for recovery. So if you imagine that these are all the muscle fibres, and after a hard ride, they're all sort of angry like this and all knotted. We talk about knots. And stretching, what it will do is it will open up those muscle fibres so that they run alongside each other. So if you look at world-class cyclists, they have a real stretching routine that they do daily, and their legs, you'd expect them to be like granite, but they're not. They're really, really soft. So when the muscle fibres are running alongside each other nicely like this, the blood flow is much better to get through. The other reason is that it will elongate the muscle. So you've got less to push against. So as an example, cycling shortens the hamstrings. So one of the issues that most cyclists have is that the hamstring is short, so the quad is having to overcome the tension within the hamstring. I see that quite a lot, and the Shimano bike fitting jig gives me a lot of examples of that, and I can actually tell how much one leg is hindering the other one. So we have that. The other thing is as well, we prevent injury, and most importantly, if you look at a cyclist's leg, this muscle, although not particularly big on me, the vastus medialis or the medial quad, gets very overdeveloped on a lot of cyclists, and that creates an imbalance. So as you're pedaling, the knee drops in, and then you force the power out to the side of the shoe. Excuse me. So it's about creating balance, or keeping balance in the legs, so the legs go up and down straight rather than inwards and outwards, so you're stopping losing power. So it helps with recovery and helps prevent injury. Again, we're always taught now to pull the shoulders in to make ourselves very aerodynamic, but over a period of time that has consequences for when you're not on the bike, and you need to keep your muscles balanced, because otherwise it affects things like breathing. So if your shoulders are around like this, you have an asphyxia of the chest. So it sort of look like this the rest of the time. But of course you're not on your bike. You're only on your bike maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours a day, if you're really keen, or certainly less than 10 hours a week, and the rest of the time you're wandering around like Mr. Burns. So it's very, very important for posture that you maintain, good posture. It helps with your breathing, and again helps with performance. So the issue that most cyclists have is that they don't see a return for the investment of time on stretching. So if you go for an hour's bike ride, you can see an hour's worth of improvement over the next couple of weeks or so. But with stretching, you don't really see that, but it is there in the background, increasing your body's ability to maintain high levels of power output. So it all goes to helping you become a more efficient cyclist. Injuries are very rare on cycling because of the fact that it's a non-impact sport. But over a period of time, that shortening of the hamstrings in particular and the rounding of the shoulders can lead to back issues later in life. So it certainly, does help. Like you said, standing up, good posture again.
Yeah, I mean, you've taught me an awful lot about the way that what used to be incredibly tight hamstrings were actually the cause of my back pain, rather than the back itself. It was the hamstrings sort of tying me in knots and trying to pull me downwards all the time.
That's right. Well, I mean, they act on the pelvis, so your hamstrings pulling on the pelvis, and in effect that pulls your sort of pelvis into a more upright position. That also prevents you from getting into a really aerodynamic position. So if you imagine your pelvis is upright like that, the most you can get into is something like this. So once you relax the hamstrings and there's less tension on the hamstrings, then you can go into a much more aero position. So you are governed in terms of bike fitting and position wise by tension within the body.
So pretty much everything that you've talked about to do with bike fitting is to do with the two sides of health and wellness and prevention of injury, and increased performance, and stretching is as big a part of that as everything.
Absolutely.